Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your panel.
Thank you. Oh, that's beautiful. Please. My name is Charles Feldman. I get to moderate this amazing panel of brilliant lawyers here. I run an international law firm out of Denver, Colorado. Was a former DEA task force commander. You can boo now. Thank you. And now we get to assist our clients in the complicated regulatory scheme for international cannabis. So my partner, AB, is in the back from Jerusalem. He will keep us on track so we don't go over. Let me introduce this most esteemed. These are the two best cannabis lawyers in the world. So you get the pleasure of getting free legal advice here today, and it's very expensive, so take notes. Shabnam Malik is a partner at Brand & Branch, founding president of the National Cannabis Bar Association, which has now just recently become the International Cannabis Bar Association. So congratulations. A giant organization now growing around the world. Her background is in trademark law. She started at a big law firm, and now in San Francisco, she has opened her own firm focusing on all things intellectual property, advertising law, the representation of lawful cannabis and hemp companies throughout the United States and across international and state borders. Our next high-dollar lawyer, Yoav Etzion, is a partner and co-head of the high-tech and venture capital department of the law firm APM here in Tel Aviv, right? It's a massive Israeli law firm. He specializes in venture capital investments, private equity transactions, public and private debt, mergers, acquisitions, financing, joint ventures, technology license. It's a long list. He also leads the law firm's medical cannabis practice, helping startup companies, investors in all things medical cannabis. So thank you so much for coming. Our first question everybody wants to know is why and what do your clients need to know about intellectual property? Why does that matter? And taxation issues. Two very sexy topics. So I'll let you, why don't Ms. San Francisco, why don't you start us?
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here. That's a big question. What do our clients need to know about IP and taxation? Well, I think where I want to start is actually what we were talking about yesterday, which is sort of I think it might be relevant here, the distinction between how intellectual property and research and development is moving forward in the United States versus how it's moving forward here in Israel. So for our clients, we tend to represent brand owners either in the cannabis space or in mainstream brand owners who are moving into cannabis or hemp. And the main question they often have is, how do I secure my intellectual property? How do I make sure my trademarks and my trade secrets and my patents are secured and that they're not infringed upon either in the United States or globally? This is a question all clients ask us, but in the cannabis industry, it's particularly interesting because in the United States, the framework for federal protection of trademarks is uncertain and really unavailable in many cases. So lawyers that serve the cannabis industry have put together a patchwork of protection that sort of uses some common law doctrines, that uses the federal trademark registration system, and relies on this sort of mix of protection to put together a blanket around the company's primary assets. And where this gets really interesting is when we are involved in diligence. So somebody comes in, wants to acquire a client, and now all of a sudden they want to know what are the client's assets and how have they protected them. And we have to point to and make sense of this patchwork, which is difficult when the acquirer or the investor is from a jurisdiction like Canada or Israel, or even in the European Union, where they have federal legalization or federal registrations available for their intellectual property assets. So what we don't have, though, while we're able to put together these portfolios, what we don't have is research and development in the United States. Because of federal illegality, there just really isn't research into the therapeutic benefits of cannabis. And you see sort of patchworks of that starting in different states, maybe in partnership with the university, maybe focusing on CBD. But we don't have what you have here in Israel, which is a very robust research and development jurisdiction. So I Curious to know more about that.
Yeah, when you look at when you look at Israel, I think that our core competencies in terms of high-tech generally and medical cannabis specifically is a very, very strong and robust R&D experience. It's not only that, that we tap into our general innovation ecosystem, we have also a tradition of R&D in this area. I think it started from the researches that Professor Meshulam did in the 70s, but it's also continued during the decades. And I think that even though cannabis specifically in Israel was not something that was in any way permissible, in the R&D area, the regulators allow it to continue during the years, to continue the research, and once what is happening in the world started in the last 5-6 years, we had a very good place to start from. And if you look at the two main advantages that we see here in Israel in respect of the R&D, is first, we have very strong academic centers here in Israel that are specialized in these areas. And everybody's talking now about the Volcanic Center, the Weizmann Institution, the Technion, the Hebrew University that have a tradition of research in this area. And we also have another advantage due to our very liberal regulation in this regard, that we allow clinical trials also in human here in Israel, which allowed the hospitals and the researchers here in Israel to gather data. And this is very important because we know that in the US it's not allowed, and also in Europe it was frowned on. And so in terms of the R&D, we had quite a lead in terms of what we did and what we can do in the future with respect to that area.
What do you tell clients who are trying to navigate all these international borders? So starting in California, wanting to do R&D in Israel, wanting to export into the EU, and financing in Canada. How do you advise on intellectual property issues when you're crossing all these borders?
I mean, I would advise to develop your brand and brand identity in the United States, where advertising is widely available, and it's growing, actually. Mainstream advertising is slowly becoming more available, although the social media channels are still really strict. But you really can develop a brand identity in the United States, and if you select something really unique, and if you develop some trade secrets, maybe a formulation or a recipe, a method of doing something, and really lock that down and protect it, you're in very good shape. And then maybe you come to Israel to do your research and development. You can right now secure registrations for, say, your trademarks in Israel in connection with your actual cannabis goods and services. You can do the same thing in Europe. It's a little dicey, but it can be done. And of course, Canada is widely available for all manner of protection of intellectual property. So you sort of want to, I think, operate in multiple jurisdictions at once and be really thinking about what it is you need to protect and what you're using a jurisdiction for. I would be focusing on R&D here. But even to the extent you are making developments, you have to be mindful to not make those same kinds of claims in the United States in your marketing or advertising. Even if you're able to make progress in research and development here, you wouldn't still be able to make claims, health claims, for example, about that progress or that research on your advertising in the United States. So you have to be really cautious, but there would be no reason to not pursue multiple channels in various global jurisdictions for different purposes at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that if you look at Israel in this regard, I think that's the main challenge that we have, is the strategy of how we take our IP developed in the R&D stage and go to the next stage of technology and products. And we did it very good in other areas. We are there when the cyber started, and we have excellent technologies in the cyber and the fintech, and now in the agritech, and now we're starting to see it in the AI and BI and robotics and everything. And here in the medical cannabis sector, what we see is very strong R&D, but the technologies are not as advanced as we've seen in other areas. And you ask yourself why. What's the reason for that? Why we did it so good, and and it's a challenge. I'm sure that it's only the beginning of the process. But I think that the main reason for that is the venture capital intervention in the market. And if you see that we have very developed venture capitalists here in Israel, in other areas, But in these specific areas, due to many reasons, traditional reasons, the fact that in the US it's yet to be legalized in the federal level, the fact that the institutional investors here in Israel are still reluctant to see what's going on. So you see a lot of resources go to R&D, but less to products. And there are a couple of good companies here in Israel, but I would expect to have much more at this stage due to the R&D volume that we have here in Israel. And I think that's the biggest challenge, because what we don't want to see here in Israel, in my opinion, is less commercialization of IP. What we see now is then you go to the Volcani, you're a Canadian company, you go to the Volcani Center, you said that's great R&D, let me take it to Canada, develop that in Canada or in the US, and make the products there. I want to have the products and technology developed here in Israel and then export everything that outside of Israel. That's what we do in other areas, and I would want to do that also here.
So are you just, I'm sorry
no.
to ask you, so are you just waiting for legal markets for the purpose of export into the United States? Is there no commercial upside to exporting the research and development itself?
There is, yeah, for sure. Now that's what we see. And you know, due to the funds flowing into this area, you see a lot of interest in the R&D, and a lot of people here come to tap into the R&D that we have here in Israel. But looking from Israel point of view, we want to have the headquarters here. We want the technology here. We want the products developed here, and then go outside and market and sell them. That's how we look at it.
How about the new sexy topic of hemp? Is that any different than, you know, when we're talking about intellectual property for marijuana?
Yeah, no, it's funny. In Israel, there is a legal discussion whether CBD is legal or not. The Ministry of Health say that it's not. Other lawyers say that they might be wrong in the interpretation. It's not completely clear, but the fact is that because of this unclarity, they look at the CBD the same way that you look at cannabis. So it's generally the same perspective from a legal point of view.
Same application, okay. How
For
about in the
us,
States?
It's the hottest topic right now in the United States, and everybody's watching to see the action the FDA might take or is going to take on permitting CBD derived from hemp infused into food and beverage products. So it's fascinating. I think that in many ways it's easier to develop a robust trademark portfolio at a federal level. We are still grappling with some issues at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office in terms of registering trademarks for use in connection with actual CBD derived from hemp, despite its now new legal status. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office hasn't really come around to understand how they might permit applications. You can get patents registered in the United States actually for marijuana products or plants as well. So that's not necessarily been a limiting factor. We're just waiting for people to come up with the new technologies and seek patent protection. But it is definitely the new frontier. I think it's a wide open field right now for hemp producers, hemp cultivators to come in. But what we see, especially from the IP end, is people trying to develop real consumer commercial products, largely food and beverage, and constantly hitting up against this FDA issue where it's still just not permitted. So, but the opportunities are still there. I think it's a terrific place to sort of enter the market.
Do you ever recommend to your clients or advise a strategy of maybe starting on the hemp side, building the brand, trademark, and pivoting?
That's got some problems and pitfalls. So in general, we don't advise that clients build a brand and use the one primary brand across both products that have THC in them and products that don't have THC in them. That presents a bit of a consumer risk, and actually it's prohibited in a couple of states, Colorado and California. Both more or less prohibit the use of brands or brand identities in connection with infused and non-infused products. So it's tricky. We do have clients who do that, who want to enter the space through hemp because they can build an IP portfolio, they can do a lot of research, they can develop products, and it's basically legal with some restrictions and issues. But I'm not sure it's the best strategy because your pivot becomes really difficult when you decide now all of a sudden to have a product on the shelves that may have a psychoactive component to it. How is a consumer going to react to that? And I don't necessarily mean at purchase where these products would be available in completely different trade channels, but I mean the post-purchase decision when somebody's at home and they have your hemp-infused honey and they also have your THC-infused honey. That's an opportunity for confusion, that's an opportunity for consumer harm, an opportunity for lawsuits. So I'm not sure
That confusion, why does that matter?
It matters because if consumers ingest THC-infused products, not knowing that that's what they're consuming, they get upset, they go to the hospital, they freak out. Some people might say that they, commit crimes, even though I don't believe that that's true. But and so it's a big PR risk for a company. It can lead to lawsuits. So that's the problem, is having products that bear the same trademark across different types of products. And those are really different types of products, something that just has CBD-derived hemp in it versus some amount of THC. So I don't love that approach, but it happens, and we advise clients on it. It's tough.
No, it's interesting because, every time that there is a regulatory uncertainty, and there is prohibition from one side on the cannabis, and from the other end, hemp looks like there is an opportunity there. From a regulatory perspective, then you see businesses go there.
Right.
So it's a very interesting, if it's a good jumping point, I really understand your question, if it's a really good jumping point to the cannabis industry on the federal level, because the regulation are not yet there.
I guess I question sort of why enter from hemp and then expand into marijuana. It's sort of that. We actually see a fair amount of the reverse happening. The companies who are maybe in one or two states with a marijuana brand are now seeing a better opportunity in hemp, or more of a national opportunity in hemp, and sort of spinning off or pivoting a brand. I wonder whether there is a business upside if you're already in hemp and you succeed in that industry, whether you do want to pivot into...
Are they creating new intellectual property for that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, both in the product development, and there's a lot of product development right now in the hemp space for our clients who've already developed a sense of how they might develop products for cannabis, and now they're sort of shifting that. They're seeing easier roads, actually, to product development and research and development for products, not for therapies. So, yeah, that's an opportunity.
Yeah, same in Israel. That's like a magic word now. Everything you can do with CBD, without CBD, it's like you can cure everything with that. So the medical data, I think, is not there yet, but there's a lot of benefits that you understand that you have there. So a lot of products that are developed now in Israel think about CBD and hemp as a major component there.
How's the R&D here for hemp and CBD for medicine therapies?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that there is a lot of research being done. I think that there are a lot of clinical trials that are being done on that. And
that's great.
I think that, I think that the uncertainty is that there's still no data. And I think that the fact that that more funds and more resources should go to this area, and everybody's waiting for the FDA to take a stance on that. And once they do, then you'll have all the the infrastructure that we built here. But then I think that the big checks will come in order to fund this amazing area.
I mean, we'll all be drinking hemp infused.
So everyone wants to know, because you guys have the insight on when the U.S. federal policy will change. Here it is. Write it down. It's coming.
Yeah, we also asked
tomorrow
that.
morning.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Well, okay.
Wait.
So on the CBD side, Gottlieb just testified before Congress maybe 5 days ago, and said that he's heard Congress loud and clear. He understands that they wanted hemp legalized and CBD legalized, and that they're really going to focus on basically really terrible health claims that might distract a consumer from using actual therapies for, say, cancer treatment, and only relying on a CBD product. So we're seeing some maybe roadways there. From the marijuana end, I have no guesses. I think it's...
Wait, I think President Trump just texted. It should be here
It's
in a minute.
legal.
Tweet. That's probably how we'll
he
find out.
just tweeted, it's legal. Marijuana's legal now.
Well, let's quickly talk. How much time we have left? 1 minute. Taxation. Anything you can give some great advice on tax issues for marijuana hemp clients? A takeaway.
From my point, it's very easy. I think that generally speaking, the tax regime in Israel for people that are coming outside of Israel is very easy. It's capital gains are for foreigners are exempted. So it's looking at your territory, and if you need to be taxed in Canada or the U.S. or any other country, then you tax there. but for capital gains on shares, on stock that you buy here in the high-tech industry, you are exempt. So I think it's a very good environment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for listening to three lawyers up here yakking away right before lunch. Appreciate it.
There we
enjoy
go.
lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not
everyone.
right before lunch. We do have one more. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you so much.